The top 10 takeaways from the 2021 SLS Lake Havasu stop are the following. Hello, and thank you for joining another episode of Dumb Data, where we break down the numbers so you don't have to. In this breakdown, we'll take a look at 10 noteworthy callouts from the second stop of the SLS 2021 tour. What lies ahead in this high-stakes competition? Let's take a look and dive into some data. Number 10. Heat 1. 2020 Olympic bronze medalist Jagger Eaton outshined everyone in the first heat. It's a little odd and overall hard to keep up with why Jagger would be placed in this heat after coming off an Olympic medal placing and third place finish at the recent Tampa Pro. Jagger did get some competition from Mickey Papa, but Felipe Mota was playing it a little too safe, Dominic Walker was more focused on getting the clip with Nyjah, and John Dilo is still figuring out how contests work. How many of these dudes will go to the finals? Number 9. Heat 2. Ryan Desenzo was the only skater in this heat to put together a run without falling, which we all know these days is a must if your run score will count towards your overall ranking in the competition. Did he do a frontside hurricane down the big square rail? Desenzo's strategy later on seemed flawed, but it does make a little sense that he tried the tray grind after stomping it in practice. Ryan not starting off with the clearly on-lock front 3 huck to give him some security is something most of these competitors actually do fail to prioritize, which we'll touch on again in a little bit. Luan Oliveira was able to throw down 2 good flip tricks, but his run was bad. He needed at least a 7.9 average to make the finals, so his insane hard flip was impressive, but wasn't enough. Olympic silver medalist Kelvin Hoffler was definitely not himself in Lake Havasu, only able to put down one decent trick with the cab back tail. Since his run wasn't perfect, like most of the runs in this stop, Kelvin would end up empty-handed as far as making the finals. P-Rod and others who throw down big sets instead of grind appear to have a disadvantage with the judges. A perfect switch flip down what I would argue is a 10 to 12 stair distance scores an underwhelming 7.5, which we know isn't high enough to make the finals. P-Rod's switch heel got docked 0.1 points compared to the switch kickflip, as if the judges were saying please change it up a little bit. The switch god held on to an ambitious switch backside flip, and the judges scored favorably even with his slightly less than 100% level landing. But because of the grind bias, P-Rod's scores were not adequate in the end. Vincent Malou's kickflip frontside tail would be his best score, and the judges later punished him for downgrading to a kickflip front lip. Without a third best trick to rely on, Vincent's run didn't do him any favors to get him out of the prelims. Manny's signature gnarly heel flip to backside grind variations weren't clicking and therefore kept him from advancing. But he did treat everyone to an always welcome varial heel back 5-0, a trick you don't see anyone else attempting, let alone landing, and therefore earning a 9 club standing. P-Rod and Luan ended up putting down scores that could get them to the finals, but again we'll have to wait and see. Number 8. Heat number 3. Shane O'Neill kicked off the third heat with a perfect 7-trick line, scoring a suspiciously low 7.5, which was a full point below Ryan Desenzo's 8.5 run. Desenzo's 8-trick run included one that was switch, while Shane had one regular trick, and every other trick from O'Neill was switch or nollie. Jagger's 8.3 run, scoring higher than Shane's with 12 tricks, 10 if you take the 2 ollies out, makes sense, because of the diversity in transition and overall higher trick volume. Just because Shane didn't do some type of transition trick means he's penalized to a sub-8 score? I thought this was street. Since when did transition become so heavily weighted in skaters' scores for street runs? As if that weren't enough, Shane gets screwed over again when his nollie frontside nose grind nollie flip on the round down rail gets a 7.4. What the f is happening here? It wasn't until Shane's final nollie backside heel huck down the main 3 block, textbook in every aspect, that the judges finally either woke up or were forced to be fair and score the trick at 8.5. Alex Midler's run was solid, and the judges rewarded him accordingly with an 8.2 for the 9 tricks he rolled away from in 45 seconds. His backside 360 scores a 7.9 on the same kicker Desenzo did the frontside 360. So backside gets a higher score than frontside? Midler's cab backside tail down the big hubba scoring 8.2 guaranteed him a spot in the finals. Deshaun Jordan's substantial scores didn't appear until his first best trick attempt, when he came out of nowhere and blasted through a cab backside lip on that super wide square rail, which scored a fairly low 7.4. Showcasing his consistency, Deshaun landed his second attempt bolts, scoring another brow-furrowing low 7.2. Keeping the landing streak alive, Deshaun sticks the tray grind with authority down the wide square rail, scoring 8, which again seems a little low for how much activity is going on under his feet. Deshaun drops another banger down the big hubba with a tray back nose slide, earning his highest score of 8.4. Felipe Gustavo's run and first best trick attempt didn't go well, so his second trick would kick things off for him, when he hung on to a nollie flip backside crook down the main hubba that scored him 8.1 points. Felipe's second switch flip backside tail slide down the big hubba scored below 8. Is that because he does the trick too much? Because the judges needed to keep scores tame before the final two heats when the tricks are expected to get tougher? Or is a switch flip backside tail slide just a somewhat decent trick these days? Felipe did get the second 9 club of the prelims with the switch flip backside nose grind down the big hubba, scoring a huge 9.3. Trent McClung randomly dropped a switch frontside 360 as his last trick after missing all 3 previous best trick attempts, which was too little too late. Felipe's switch flip grind tricks and 9 club score put him on top of Jagger for the prelims, and Midler, Deshaun, and Shane put P-Rod and Luan's final shot at jeopardy, but there's still 2 heats to go. Number 7. Heat 4. No one's run in Heat 4 would be substantial enough to carry them to the finals, so we don't see anything interesting until Carlos Ribeiro sparked the best trick section with a nollie backside 180 Bennett grind attempt that erroneously turned into a slide, and he was penalized accordingly with a very low 4.7. Alec Majerus cleanly flicked his way through a kickflip back lip down the wide square rail to score a respectable 7 points. 2 tries later, Alec delivers with a big backside flip to score 8 points. Chris Joslin did the exact same trick as Alex Midler in the same spot on the course, a backside 360, and scored an 8.1 instead of a 7.9 like Midler. Is that because Joslin boosted the trick farther? Chris sends a backside big spin halfway across the park to score an 8.3. Similar to P-Rod's spot favoritism, Joslin flings a backside flip into the stratosphere, landing bolts and gets a low 7.9. Majerus got an 8.4 for the backside flip over the rail, but Joslin's skyscraping backside flip is penalized with a sub 8 score. The judges must not appreciate the monotony in Joslin's trick and spot selection. Sean Malto's nollie frontside crook was met with a metaphoric yawn from the judges, based on the below average 6.4 score. Malto's tricks and scores would end up making you wonder how he was put in such a high heat, with his last switch backside Smith down the wide square rail scoring him only 6.9. Tori Pudwill landed a really long backside lip slide to fakie up and down the left of center hubba and scored a 6.7, which made me think that Tori should have known better than to try such an ambitious trick. When you're skating these contests, the judges want to see difficulty condensed into a quick combo of tricks or something they've never seen before. Tori doing a long back lip is just kind of a party trick, and not so much of a jaw-dropping holy shit maneuver. Given how long Tori's been in the contests, it's painful to watch him and other vets like Ryan Desenzo foolishly doing other tricks that are guaranteed to score low but are still risky. Tori did pop an ollie into a backside Smith higher than anyone else in the contest down the awkward side of the wide square rail, which the judges appreciated and generously scored with an 8.5. But Tori couldn't put together another successful attempt in the best trick section, so his 1.0 run score would prevent him from further advancement to the finals. It wasn't announced on SLS, but Chris Joslin and Alec Majerus were in a tight race for the Best Goatee Award, which Joslin would end up winning, getting the edge by supplementing his finely trimmed scruff with some new braces. Luan did end up getting bumped from making the finals thanks to Joslin, and with a fully stacked Heat 5 about to commence, P-Rod, Shane, and even Deshaun are in danger of getting eliminated. Number 6. Heat 5. Relatively fresh-faced Lucas Rubello initiated the final heat with a flawless 7-trick run that was not as diverse as the judges seemed to believe. The only flip tricks were regular kickflips, and one of them into a fairly generic frontside 50-50 on a ledge. But Rubello got a hefty 8.0 score, which further adds to the case of Shane getting unjustly screwed on a low-scoring run. Rubello was able to sustain a strong showing so far with a nollie backside 180 nose grind to earn a 7.8 for his first best trick attempt. His third score of 8.0 comes right after with a twisty frontside 270 back lip down the A-frame rail. Nyjah Huston kept the perfect run train rolling, and apart from a disgusting pivot after the switch heel flip up the stone gap, his run score would be the highest of the day at 8.6. It's worth mentioning that Nyjah and Jagger's lines draw parallels with trick selection, and Nyjah scored 0.3 higher than Jagger while having less tricks, even if you take out Jagger's 2 stupid ollies. I think Nyjah should have received the same score as Jagger's or lower, given the decrease in trick quantity and the glaring similarities in trick selection. The best trick section in the prelims is where we get to witness Nyjah's high IQ in terms of strategy. Rubello went right before him and scored a 7.8 with the nollie backside 180 nose grind, so Nyjah, sitting pretty with a high run score, realizes he can earn a 7.8 with the trick that he apparently has on lock, and this will pad his overall score while he attempts harder tricks. If you're skating in a competition where a lot of money is at stake, is it more important to look dope and steezy but miss all your tricks? Or is it worth your while to observe what tricks are scoring high and then force the judges to duplicate that score for you when you copy your competitor? Nyjah's second best trick attempt received an 8.3 in the form of a half cab back Smith back 180. With his position to the finals secured, Nyjah can now step on the gas a little more and enjoy some finals practice by switch heel flip front tail sliding down the big hubba, getting the third 9 club score of the prelims. I'm not going to argue with that score, that's a crazy trick. There's another intangible benefit to Nyjah being in this position that further helps his chances of moving ahead in the entire competition, and that is the sheer terror he's inflicting on the rest of the competitors by flexing so hard after already being cleared to the finals. Can you imagine having to follow a 9 club score without even having a spot yet in the finals? The pressure gets condensed, and sure enough, no one was able to even come close to dropping a banger after this trick. Jamie Foy got bucking this bitch with a grind-laden 7-trick run, earning an 8.2. In his second best trick attempt, Jamie executes a frontside crook shove and gets an underwhelming 7.6. Come on, judges, who else is doing this trick? Shove out of a front crook on a round rail, and it's scored below 8? The judges are so fixated on hubba tricks, it's sickening. Playing it smart and going for a level-headed fakey front crook down the big hubba, Jamie somehow is able to stay focused after Nyjah's 9 club trick and earns himself a 7.9. What, since he didn't flip in or shove out, Jamie can't get himself an 8? Sketchy, judges. What follows was probably the worst scoring of the day, with Jamie's abysmally low 7.1 from the half cab back 5-0. Nyjah did a half cab back Smith 180 and got an 8.3. Jamie does a pretty similarly difficult trick minus the 180 out and gets penalized by more than 1 whole point. This incompetence from the judges brickwalled Jamie from making the finals, and he was only 0.1 points from making the cut. If the judges even gave Jamie a 7.7, which is totally fair, he ties for 8th and makes the finals. Seriously, what the f***? Gustavo Ribeiro shook off a bad run and cleanly rolled away from a tray front grind down the big hubba, scoring 8.2 on his first best trick attempt. This shows another judging flaw with bias towards later heats as we call back Deshawn's exact same trick from Heat 3, where he tray front grinds down the scarier wide square rail and scored a lower 8.0. Adding further confusion, Gustavo's second best trick is a high-risk back crook nollie flip down the wide square rail, but it scores another 8.2. Nollie flipping out of a crook going down a huge rail is scary as f***, and the judges score it the same as the tray grind, which I guess makes sense, but I would argue flipping out of a grind deserves a higher score than flipping in. It wouldn't end up being an issue though, because Gustavo didn't land his last 2 best trick attempts. With the last prelims heat finished, Nyjah and Lucas would knock P-Rod and Shane out of the finals. Number 5. No Yuto. If you felt like something was missing in the heats, you were right. Olympic champion Yuto hasn't competed in either of the first two SLS stops. According to the website, Yuto's asterisk next to his name indicates he's injured or unable to skate. If you're not injured, why aren't you able to skate? Hopefully he's okay. Number 4. Finals runs. Jagger would be the first skater in the finals to put together a run without falling, and the judges' scoring evolved to being very generous, giving Jagger a 9 for taking the exact same run from the day before and replacing the third trick with a kickflip back lip instead of a backside Smith, and then the last trick with a switch backside 180 nose grind instead of a switch frontside nose grind. Don't get me wrong, Jagger's no joke with his abilities on a skateboard. Apparently this motherfucker used to skate the mega ramp, so skating the street finals is probably a walk in the park for Jagger. But this lack of creativity is soul-crushing as a viewer. Speaking of soul-crushing, Nyjah also copy-pasted his run from the prelims and replaced only the last trick with a nollie backside 180 nose grind to fakie instead of a nollie frontside nose slide down the big hubba. And got a 9.6. This just tells me that judges don't give a about originality. Nyjah was kind enough to disclose to Deshawn what the secret song is to scoring a 9.6 in a run at SLS. Number 3. Finals tricks. The hype song must have worked its magic because Deshawn's tray front grind down the wide rail earned him an 8.3. Deshawn swoops a tray flip backside nose slide down the big hubba. And as predicted, the judges yawned and signed off with an 8.4. On his third best trick attempt, Deshawn decided to spin around instead of flip his board on the big square rail with a cab back lip, but his score was a sub 8, a 7.4, which is an egregious display of scoring by the judges. Deshawn's last trick of the finals was a 4th consecutive make, something no one else achieved in the finals. And boy was it a special one. A bigger flip front board down the wide square rail finally backed the judges into a corner and left them with no choice but to give Deshawn a 9 club score. Mickey Papa appears for the first time since Heat 1 of the prelims and lands a difficult nollie backside 180 nose grind to regular down the wide square rail, scoring a 7.8. Wait, so achieving the ability to go back to regular after awkwardly twisting in and out of that trick gets the same score as a nollie backside 180 to fakie? I've been scratching my head for the last 3 hours trying to understand the judging logic behind the scores here. Clearly having a soft spot for flipping into tricks as long as they're not trays, Mickey's nollie heel front board wowed the judges enough to give him an 8.7, but dare I suggest this trick should have been a 9 club? Overall, apart from Shane not making the finals, I think Mickey got screwed the most by the judges. His last trick was a nollie heel flip backside 50-50. Not easy, awkward to flip your board behind you and just snag a grind down the hubba, and he gets a pathetic 7.5. That's a full point below what it should have been. I bet there's some personal beef going on where the judges have a problem with Mickey, because that's such a transparently incorrect score. I admire Mickey's ability to stay composed and not throw his board into the judges' booth. Lucas Rubello's first best trick attempt got a 9 club score, thanks to his nollie 270 front nose slide down the big hubba. I won't argue with getting 9 points for a trick you don't really see that often. Rubello switched it up a little, taking his last trick in a different direction and on a different rail, with a gap to frontside 270 switchback lip down the A-frame rail. The judges rolled their eyes and scored it a dismissive 8.0. At this point, I've lost track of how many inconsistencies the judges are guilty of, but here's another. Alex Midler's copy-paste backside 360 getting a different score from his prelims. They gave him an extra 0.1 points because his hat stayed on. His second trick was crazy with the cab back tail to fakie, and the judges' amnesia was showing when they gave Alex an 8.2. Rubello's nollie 270 front nose gets a 9, but cab tail slide down the same obstacle is almost an entire point lower? I guess fakie's easier, but only an 8.2? Y'all are wild. Felipe Gustavo couldn't have done his nollie flip back crook down the big hubba any cleaner, but the judges didn't really with it. So they gave him the scoring equivalent of a middle finger with an 8.3. On his third best trick attempt, Felipe clung for dear life to a switch flip backside nose grind down the big hubba, and doing their best to redeem the wrongdoing of the previous score, the judges gave the trick a 9 club. Jagger Eaton's second best trick attempt was a backside flip nose grind, scoring an 8.7, which just seems a little low but not as bad as other scores. The only other best trick Jagger would land in the finals was a confusing one. I'll admit, I'm not a grind aficionado, so I'm stabbing in the dark at this trick name, but it looks like a nollie frontside 180 fakie 5-0, which you don't see anyone doing really, and I agree with Jagger's confused look when the judges collectively took a steaming shit on him and scored it a 7.6. Nyjah landed a gnarly frontside half cab blunt to fakie down the big hubba, earning an 8.9. Fine, but his third best trick might be one of the most blatant displays of the judges unfairly favoring Nyjah over anyone else. Remember the nollie backside 180 nose grind Mickey Papa did on the rail, getting a 7.8? Well, Nyjah did the same trick down the hubba and got an 8. The rail Mickey did is longer and taller than the middle hubba that Nyjah jumped down. Life-changing financial benefits are enjoyed by competitors in contests who score high and place well. Why is Mickey Papa excluded from being allowed to have a high score? If anything, Nyjah's score should be lower since he did it after Mickey. But no, he gets a high score because he steezed out the landing more than Mickey did. This is why people get pissed about these contests. Nyjah doesn't deserve to get scored lower, but he also shouldn't be disproportionately scoring higher than other skaters who do the same tricks. Turning up the heat on his final trick of the finals, Nyjah pirouetted through a cab backside nose blunt and scored a 9.3, which is whatever, it's a hard trick, but only Nyjah gets favored for the tricks that actually deserve a high score. So the prestige is kind of lost on me. With Nyjah's 9.3, the finals are done, leaving Nyjah in the lead, followed by Deshawn, Jagger, and Felipe, who aren't done yet. Number 2. Super Final. SLS rules are changing all the time. I could swear there used to be 2 runs in the competition, but now we're only doing 1 run, with 4 best tricks, and the top 3 scores count, when it used to be the top 4 scores count. Now we're doing a Super Finals, where the top 4 skaters in the final get 2 more tricks to boost their standings going into the finals Super Crown SLS stop. If it means we get to see more intense skating, I won't complain, but it is a little hard to follow. None of the 4 super finalists landed their 5th trick, but Felipe got lit with a switch flip frontside tail slide down the big hubba for another 9 club score. Deshawn showed everyone that if the judges didn't stupidly score his tray grind tricks so low, he might have won this contest after he finally got scored somewhat fairly with a 9.3 on the nollie inward heel flip front board slide. Ironically, Nyjah's unnecessary switch heel flip frontside 5-0 scored a 6.7, which is just the icing on the cake that proves the judges kinda just do what they want. Is there not some kind of standardized score list for tricks? Anyway, Nyjah goes and gets his head rubbed for good luck by the crowd, and he even pets a dog to show us that he is human. Number 1. Super Crown. Nyjah, Felipe, Alex Midler, and Gustavo Ribeiro get an automatic pass into the finals of the Super Crown. Everyone else, including Deshawn, need to grind through the prelims for a shot at making the finals. Hopefully, the judges will get their together and not f up the scores as much as they did in Lake Havasu, but time will tell. Well, that pretty much covers the top 10 takeaways of the 2021 Lake Havasu SLS contest. Thanks again for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to Dumb Data, click the notification bell to stay on top of new episodes, and drop a like if you enjoyed this breakdown. See you on the next Dumb episode.